The mysterious Red Book. Ben walked the same path to and from work every day. It was a 4-mile loop through Merchant Lake Forest Preserve, but Ben only used a mile-long stretch along the east side. He would trudge through some wild grass and low shrubs for about 50 feet until he emerged on the back lot of Cletus Auto Shop. One evening, when Ben arrived back at his trailer, he found a red children's book leaning against his screen door. A thin hardcover with the picture of a dusty gray British shorthair cat on the front. The title was Felix and the Hidden Treasure. Ben hated cats, and just seeing the cover of this book enraged him. He kicked it aside, reminiscing about the many cats he had kicked at on the path to and from work all these years. The book came to a rest next to the metal stairs, open to the last page. Felix sat on a pile of coins and treasure underneath a shady chestnut tree. The way Felix looked at him, that's what intrigued Ben. Against his initial instinct to avoid reading at all costs, Ben bent over and scooped up the book. Inside his trailer, he plopped down on a heavily duct-taped lounge chair that used to be black leather. Opening the book made him feel like a kid again when nobody read to him. Forgetting to even change out of his greasy overalls, Ben turned to the first page. Felix the cat stood at the beginning of a path, just like the bike path Ben walked to work every day. It even had the orange stripe down the middle. Felix looked over his shoulder, beckoning the reader to come on an adventure with him. Astonished at the picture on page 2, Ben felt a sense of déjà vu as his eyes fell upon Felix walking past a rusty gate hanging askew on an equally rusty white metal fence. Behind the fence was a junkyard. The very same junkyard Ben passed every day. It even had the same blue 1970 Chevy on blocks, heavily rusted. As if mesmerized, Ben turned the page. Just up ahead, painted the color blue, a rundown shed, for me and you. Ben's eyes bulged as he remembered the blue shed he passed every day just a bit further down from the junkyard. It was a flimsy tin structure, barely standing. But it was blue. The white doors had failed over the years, and now it just sat open. Felix urged Ben on farther. On the next page, he could see Felix regarding a pair of elm trees arching over the path. Ben shook his head in disbelief. He knew those trees. They were just a bit farther down from the broken-down shed. It formed a little shady arch over the path, which he enjoyed most during the summer months. Immersed in the journey, Ben let the world around him slip away. He could almost see Felix walking on his path, guiding him toward something. On the next page, Felix stood in front of an old water pump Ben knew well. It was exactly halfway between the start of his daily walk and when he got to the back lot of the garage he worked at. Felix had a raised paw, pointing at a well-hidden dirt path carved subtly into the lush wild grasses. Ben's mouth hung open as he turned to his right, in his imagination. This time of year, he would have to duck through the dense forest. Thick branches would wick at his shoulders and head, but he could be careful. Felix led Ben through a maze of flowering bushes and lush green grasses. The winding path no longer familiar as it strayed from the paved bike path, but promised something glorious. As Ben stared at the page, he felt a chill run down his spine. It was as if the book had been written just for him. He had walked past all these places every day without ever realizing the adventure that awaited him. But now, he felt a pull, a desire to follow in Felix's paw steps and find the treasure that awaited him. He couldn't explain it, but the book had awakened something inside of him. Without a second thought, he got up from the chair and put on his boots. He grabbed a flashlight and headed out the door, the book still in his hand. As he walked down the path, he felt a sense of excitement he hadn't felt since he was a child. He passed the rusty gate, the junkyard, the blue shed, and the elm trees. When he got to the old water pump, he took a deep breath and turned onto the dirt path Felix had shown him in the book. The path was overgrown and treacherous, but Ben pushed through, the thought of the treasure driving him forward. He pushed through the thick branches, feeling them tug at his clothes and scratch his skin. But he didn't care. He was on a mission. Finally, he emerged into a small clearing, just like the one in the book. He saw the white pines and the dirt path leading deeper into the forest. He took a deep breath and followed the path. As he walked, the trees grew taller and the air grew colder. He could feel the weight of the treasure drawing him forward, and he quickened his pace. Finally, he saw the small clearing ahead, just like the one in the book. And there, at the base of the mountain of coins and jewels, was the treasure chest overflowing with riches. Ben's heart raced as he approached the chest. He opened it slowly and saw the piles of gold coins and stacks of bills. He couldn't believe it. It was real. As he reached out to touch the treasure, he heard a sound behind him. He turned to see a pair of glowing eyes staring at him from the darkness. It was a cat, a huge black and white tomcat. It looked like it had been waiting for him. Ben took a step back, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, the cat spoke. "You have found the treasure," it said in a deep, guttural voice. "But it comes at a price." "What price?" Ben asked, his heart racing. "The price of your soul," the cat replied. Ben hesitated for a moment, but then he made his decision. He would take the treasure, but he would not give up his soul. He turned and ran, the treasure chest in his arms, the cat's eyes glowing in the darkness behind him. When he emerged from the forest, he saw that it was morning. He had been gone all night. He ran back to his trailer and hid the treasure, unsure of what to do with it. As he sat in his trailer, he couldn't stop thinking about the cat and the price of the treasure. He realized that he had been given a second chance, a chance to change his life. Ben's fingers brushed against the smooth surface of a gold coin, and he felt a shiver run down his spine. He lifted the coin, watching as it glittered in the dim light. It was real. The treasure was real. But as he looked closer, he noticed something strange. The coins were tarnished, the bills were old and yellowed. It was as if they had been buried here for decades. As he pondered this strange discovery, he heard a faint rustling in the trees behind him. He spun around, his heart racing, but he saw nothing. He turned back to the chest, but something was different. The coins had turned black, the bills had crumbled to dust. The treasure was gone. A cold sweat broke out on Ben's forehead as he heard the rustling again, this time louder. He whipped around, shining his flashlight into the darkness. And there, standing before him, was a figure. It was a man, tall and thin, with wild hair and sunken eyes. He wore tattered clothing and carried a small, rusted knife. Ben's mouth went dry as he realized he was staring at a ghost. The ghost of the man who had buried the treasure. The ghost stepped forward, and Ben stumbled backward, his mind racing. He had to get out of here. He turned and ran, his heart pounding in his chest. He could hear the ghost's ragged breath behind him, feel the cold touch of his fingers. Ben didn't know how long he ran, but eventually, he burst through the trees and into the clearing where his trailer sat. He slammed the door behind him, panting and sweating. As he caught his breath, he realized something was wrong. The book was gone. He had dropped it somewhere in the forest. He knew he couldn't go back there, not after what had happened. But he couldn't shake the feeling that the book was still out there, waiting for someone to find it. Waiting to lure them into the forest and trap them forever. For days, Ben couldn't sleep. He was haunted by the ghost of the treasure seeker and the memory of the mysterious red book. He tried to convince himself that it was all a dream, that he had imagined it all. But he couldn't shake the feeling that it was real. Finally, he decided he had to go back. He had to find that book and destroy it, make sure no one else fell under its spell.